Perhaps more than any other feature of the Prophet Muhammad's life, his marriages have proved controversial, whether it be the marriage to Aisha at a very young age, or his polygamy, he married so many wives, or his marriage to Zainab. This has caused, well, quite some scandal in some Western, particularly the last marriage to Zainab has caused scandal almost from the very beginning. So I just wanted to look at some expert opinion on this from the West, from Western scholarship. And just wanted to read from this book called Muhammad, A Very Short Introduction by Jonathan A.C. Brown. And this very short introduction is part of a series of books for anyone wanting stimulating introductions to a new subject. They're all written by experts, chosen by Oxford University Press. And they're published in more than 25 languages, and they cover everything from advertising, African history, animal rights, anti-Semitism, ethics, Galileo, galaxies, you name it, they cover it. Sociology, socialism, theology, United Nations, paganism, cancer, the Vikings, witchcraft, you name it, it's covered. So they picked a top expert to write this little book on Muhammad, and I do recommend it. It's superb. And he, that is Jonathan A.C. Brown, has written a section called Muhammad's Marriages in Context. It's a very short section. I just wanted to share it with you. Who is Jonathan A.C. Brown? He's a professor of Islamic Studies at the university, at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. He's an American, and he has published in the fields of Hadith. His PhD was in Hadith, Islamic law, Sufism, Arabic lexical theory, and pre-Islamic poetry. On the back, it's got some rave reviews. John L. Exposito, who's a professor at Georgetown University and expert on Islam, says, "This is a masterful treatment, informed by first-rate scholarship, yet engaging, accessible, and distinctively different from previous books on Muhammad." So, what does Jonathan A.C. Brown have to tell us about Muhammad's marriages in context? Well, I think he shares us some quite interesting information to help really contextualize this whole subject in a very helpful way. So, more than any other feature of Muhammad's life, his many marriages have consistently struck and bewildered Western readers since the rise of Islam. The Prophet's polygamy and the Quranic ruling that Muslim men can marry up to 4 women at a time — the Prophet was allowed more because it was believed that he would never mistreat any of his wives — created early on in medieval Christendom an image of Muhammad as lustful. Prior to Christianity, however, the Near East, from pharaonic Egypt to ancient Mesopotamia, was a world in which polygamy was not foreign at all. For most men, it would have been too expensive. But for rulers or men of great import, it was an expectable tool of politics and propagation. Perhaps the most famous exemplar for harem politics — that's not haram, but harem politics — was King Solomon, whom the Bible says had 700 wives and 300 concubines. You can read all about that in 1 Kings chapter 11. Among them was the daughter of the Pharaoh of Egypt, whom he had married to cement an alliance. Indeed, looked at through a political lens, Muhammad's marriages worked towards clear political goals. His marriage to Khadijah, of course, had predated his prophethood, and she remained his only wife until she died. Let us look at whom the Prophet married after that, and to whom he married his daughters. Muhammad married the daughters of Abu Bakr and Umar, and married his own daughters to Uthman and Ali. These 4 men were the first full rulers of the Muslim state after the Prophet's death. Muhammad also married the daughter of Abu Sufyan, as well as the sister of Abbas's wife Maymunah, who was also the aunt of Khalid bin al-Walid, the great general. Abu Sufyan's son, Muawiyah, founded the Umayyad Caliphate after Ali's death in 660 CE, and Khalid was a leading general of the Muslim armies. The Prophet's marriages and those of his family thus helped to create the network that provided the leadership of the Muslim community in the century after Muhammad's death. The Prophet also entered into other politically potent marriages. He wed the daughter of the Jewish chief of Khaybar, as well as numerous women from leading Arab tribes. The fact that we know nothing more than the tribal identities of two of these women further demonstrates that it was the political relationship that Muhammad was fostering that mattered. There is nothing more controversial to the modern reader than Muhammad's marriage to Aisha, who is believed to have been between 9 and 10 years old when the marriage was consummated. The most reliable historical sources on this marriage are the Sahih Hadith collections of Al-Bukhari and Muslim. Interestingly, no critic of Muhammad, from his fiercest opponents in the Quraysh to medieval Christian clerics, objected to his marriage to so young a wife until the modern period. This is noteworthy since there has certainly never been a shortage of detractors seeking chinks in the armour of Muhammad's character to exploit. His marriage to Zainab, his adopted son's former wife, which attracted criticism even during Muhammad's own lifetime. The fact that Zayd is one of only 2 contemporaries of Muhammad ever mentioned in the Qur'an, the other is Abu Lahab, as well as the book's sizable passage on the Zainab episode, testifies to the controversy surrounding Muhammad's marriage to her. One of the earliest Christian polemicists against Islam, John of Damascus, he died in 749, accused Muhammad of tailoring the Quranic laws on marriage and adoption to legitimize his desire for Zainab. This accusation has been repeated endlessly throughout Christian writings on Islam, and certainly on YouTube and other places. Christians are still milking this story for all they can get in their desire to discredit the Prophet of Islam. The 13th century English historian Matthew Paris, for example, wrote in his great chronicle that Muhammad had pronounced polygamy permissible to cover up an affair with a servant, presumably Zayd's, wife. The reason that no pre-modern critics paid attention to the Prophet's marriage to a 10-year-old was because marrying girls considered underage today was commonplace in the pre-modern world. It was a common reality then. Under Roman law, the earliest permitted age for marriage was 12. In the heyday of the Roman Empire, that's the 2nd century AD, by 14 a girl was considered an adult whose primary purpose was marriage. In many pre-modern law codes, such as the Hebrew Biblical Law and the Salic Frankish Law, marriage age was not a question at all. It was assumed that when a girl reached puberty and was able to bear children, she was ready for marriage. So basically the biblical norm for marriage, age of marriage, was puberty, whenever that might be. As a result, we find that average marriage ages in the pre-modern world were remarkably young. Surviving evidence from several centuries of Imperial Roman history suggests that as many as 8% married at 10 or 11. That's 1 in 10. In Italy in the 1300s and 1400s, the average age for women was 16 to 17. Even in the 1861 census in England, over 350 women married under the age of 15 in just 2 counties that year. According to both Christian and Muslim teachings, the Virgin Mary was not the mature maternal figure seen in artwork about the Bible. She was at most in her mid-teens, having only just begun menstruating, and is reported to have been as young as 10 years old. Muhammad's decision to consummate his marriage to a 10-year-old would have been based on the same criteria as most pre-modern societies: Aisha's sexual maturity and readiness to bear a child. Consummation of the marriage would have occurred when she had menstruated and started puberty. As the great Muslim historian al-Tabari, died 923, reported, at the time of her marriage contract, Aisha was young and not capable of intercourse. 3 or 4 years later, however, she was able. Aisha herself would later remark that a girl can menstruate as young as 9 and thus become a woman. So I think I'll end the quote there. So that's absolutely fascinating. I think when you have a scholarly, objective analysis of Muhammad's marriages in their historical and cultural context, things look very, very different than our local, very recent historical obsession with related issues like this. So I think it's very, very interesting. And also the biblical norm as well, marriage at puberty, which would have Muhammad's own marriages would have fitted in quite neatly with that paradigm as well. So as I was saying, I do recommend this book. It is very short, but it's packed full of useful, scholarly and first-rate scholarship, as it says on the back here, published by Oxford University Press. It's quite cheap. And have a look at the other items in their series as well. I've learned a great deal on many other subjects from experts in the field who produce these little booklets. So there we go. Hope you found that interesting. Till next time.